folks, welcome to DWRP News. I am Prudence, and apparently I am also a liar because I said there was no need for a weekend broadcast when, duh, it's the start of the month and many games don't care when the first of the month falls. Oh well. I also have to say the other thing spurring me onto this first official episode is that in the 3 days since I posted that intro, you wonderful people have spread the word, and the DWRP News Plurk account already has over 250 fans. Holy wow, thank you so much. And without further ado, let's get straight to the traffic. So, Lucetti's apps are open until the 7th. No, wait, it's actually the 8th this month. Awesome. If you like the idea of a multi-sided war with fantasy elements, but Lucetti is just too big for you, there are 2 holdovers from the DW move that might interest you. Aether has a chess-like game theme going for it, but point is limited slots, so currently knight positions are the only options available. Added flavor is memory loss. Applications are technically always open, just limited by those available slots. The round table is based on D20's Urban Arcana. Think Supernatural, Sleepy Hollow, where it's our world except fantasy elements exist. Reserves are now open until each app cycle, which takes place in-game on the 1st of every month. That's called their knighting ceremony. Looking at more of the fantasy games, you have Sumerium's reserves, which are open until the 21st, and Soul Campaign's reserves are now permanently open, but their applications are opening on the 15th of the month, so don't miss that opportunity. Everyone should try Soul Campaign at least once. It's a great game. Milloway's Bar is still hanging tough, but their app period closes on the 7th of the month. If you miss that, consider Asgard. Reserves are now closed, but applications are now open until the 12th. It has a house breakdown that should appeal to Harry Potter aficionados, but with Norse mythology on the same sweeping technological scale as the Thor movies. On the other hand, for a Zodiac flair instead of a Norse flair of make a stand on an alien world, you have the game Zodion. And I can't believe I never realized that connection between the names. Anyway, reserves will soon close on the 8th, but you can still jump on the apps from the 8th to the 15th. However, back to the more mainstream sci-fi, if you haven't heard, Gargle Blasted, aka Mostly Harmless, has gone full Musebox. This is a popular new endgame mechanic for mods who choose not to provide a wrap-up to their game's plots, simply can't provide one, or the player base would rather the game be left in that unattended state. Fear not though, world hoppers. One game that has been humming along under the radar is The Outer Divide. They have perpetually open reserves and applications, but reserves expire after a month. Sci-fi dystopia with dinosaurs and domes. Check out the rebuilding. Then you have Exilium, which has so much world hopping it's no wonder it's attracted a sizable Kingdom Hearts cast, although that's waned lately. Reserves are currently open for the app cycle opening November 1st. Not that Exile is literally a Kingdom Hearts game, but if you like your sci-fi more literally themed, then try out Destiny Strings, which is heavily based in the Persona and greater Shin Megami Tensei world mechanics. Right now you have a great chance to try before you buy, but we'll come back to that in the weather segments. Like adventure but prefer the high seas, there's a game for that. A game literally called High Seas has applications opening on the 7th. And my timeline seems to be all about this game, and it's new enough to be on the new games ATP thread, so no history to bog you down if that's normally a turnoff. For a combination seafaring and prison game, look at The Last Voyages. This game opened on Dreamwidth prior to the Exodus, so to me it just looks like it never fully got integrated into the old LJ crowd's games that they generally think of. Still, if you like fantasy but you're addicted to Flight Rising or the How to Train Your Dragon 2 trailer, may I suggest you check out Dragon Haven. I don't know how this game has survived the move, but it has, and the only crime I see is no Dragon Riders of Perncast. I know you're out there, McCaffrey readers, get on it. If you like your exploration with more of a grimdark twist, Animus is the way to go. Apps are only open until the 8th, so get a move on. I know the idea of a tower sounds like a prison game, but there's way more exploring that goes on, and generally gets the player base in trouble as a result. Exit Void is a similar premise, but an older game that made the jump from LiveJournal, and also has a distinctly 1920s Americana feel to it. You have until the 10th to check it out and submit an application. Then there's Demelier. I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce it, which is exactly as advertised if you know who the artist is for their primary inspiration image. That would be the work of Brian Froud, who designed the goblins and other umbral fae creatures for Labyrinth, the movie. Basically, don't expect any Disney fairies running around this place. Their reserves and applications are currently perma-open. More in the vein of horrors out of Ireland, there's the game Changed, based on White Wolf's games of the similar name. They're also dealing with memory loss in their game, but it is very much based on the changeling myth of fae kidnapping. Their reserves and apps are currently open, but I just had to make a note for mods. If you're posting to the ATP, links are your friend, not just one to your game that's hidden behind pretty HTML formatting. The last high fantasy game I'll mention is the newish Beastly Roses, which from the description is kind of like the Brothers Grimm movie in the sense of fairy tale mashup, but with the more grim bent of the older folklore. I don't see this quite as supernatural as Once Upon a Time, but maybe that's just me. There is a Song of Ice and Fire cast growing there, and that makes me happy. All that being said, I think they have one of the best game entrance premises ever. You wake up in a glass coffin. Oh, well, that's just like waking up in a sci-fi pod. No, this is Snow White, where they really think you're already dead. Pods are generally expected to have people wake up from them. Anyway, Beastly Roses also has reserves and apps permanently open right now, plus a test drive meme. Go take advantage of it. Holly Heights applications are also open only until the 7th. If you aren't familiar with the premise, the game's username is poolside for a reason. Slice of life. But prefer your modern game with a bit more survival horror in a castle environment instead? Believe it or not, 2 older games fit that bill. 2. One game, Thusia, has managed to survive the DW move all this time, much like its survival horror premise would indicate, especially since the only characters that can arrive there are dead. So hey, it's less fantasy than Polychromatic and significantly less history to it too. Incidentally, both Thusia and Poly have perma-open applications. Then you have the reboot of Disney Academy with purportedly a darker theme to it. It's like one of the producers for Escape from Tomorrow whispered in one of the mods' ears or something. Dang. Their apps are currently open for Disney-esque characters, and their non-Disney apps will be opening later this month on the 25th, so be prepared for that limited window. The granddaddy of all urban outdoor RP games, Camp FU Die, will be receiving new applications starting the 16th of this month and still has no reserves, so don't bet on that to keep your spot warm. If you haven't heard the stories about how Dreamwidth had to prep their servers for that game's move off of LiveJournal, at least ask about it sometime if you know someone who plays there. P.S. This is an unofficial petition to reopen the Whispering Rock game because god dang, everyone deserves a chance to enjoy Psychonauts in any capacity. That game was awesome and I wish my desktop port wasn't so herky-jerky. For another nostalgia bomb, there will always be the Pokemon-based games, which I think can practically be its own genre by now. Sci-fi, dystopia, fantasy, urban fantasy, horror, slice of life, and then you have Pokemon. Of course, there's still the pillar of username swipes, that is Route 29. It looks like you can expect apps to be processed this weekend, meaning your next opportunity to get a new application processed will be in 2 more weeks. You can submit at any time before then. For a smaller game that somehow survived the LiveJournal move, check out United One, which is adorable for the simple fact of a randomized banner featuring several different Pokemon. They're small enough to have apps always open, and their premise centers on Unova's Entralink. Works for me. Then you have Gracidian, which is completely appless and based on Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. Yes, your character can get zapped into a Pokemon body. The game opens on the 7th, and there's a meet and greet in the OOC-com, so have fun with that. As far as I know, the only superhero game to survive the move is Cape and Cowl. Their reserves are about to run out on the 7th, but you could still snag an application spot when they open at the same time reserves close. If you like heroics a bit more mundane, then I have 2 recs for you. The first is Boomtown, which is a new Western-themed game, but Western in the Firefly and Trigun sense. Not even the Cowboy Bebop sense, I think. Like, even more rustic than that. Apps will open November 1st, and I think reserves are open until then. As long as there's no gross Indian stereotypes, I wish them well. Then there's one of the most literally named games I've ever seen. Star Trek. It's a new game, set aboard the USS Enterprise. You don't get more literal than that, folks. Reserves last 1 week, and apps are open for the foreseeable future since the game doesn't even open until November 1st. For more mech suits and monsters, though, you want Event Horizon. Considering the tagline in ATP is Giant Robots and Kaiju, and the account was created 10 days after Pacific Rim premiered, I'm just saying, Pacific Rim's not mentioned anywhere, but either the mods liked Pacific Rim that much, or they just got inspired by the same anime and manga that Del Toro was, along with obvious Jason and the Argonauts exploration references. Apps opened on the 1st, and the first person to app Dr. Ryan's Stone there gets a cookie. On to the sex games. Amatomnes' apps are opening soon. Their window is the 7th through the 13th. If you prefer modern dystopia as your sex game setting, then you want City of Ariel. Silly me thought it was fantasy, but nope, dystopia. Applications are open until the 8th, so if you miss that, you have to wait until next month or at least the 23rd when their reserves open again. For a smaller game, consider Throne of Shadows, which is literally about the search for an alien world's prince's romantic partner of any gender or species. Being a smaller game, they have reserves and applications that are always open. From my limited experience with both Amat and TOS, while they're set in other worlds, there's much more low-key fantasy elements to them, more like historic fiction than anything. Well, Languishment boasts more fantasy than that anyway, while keeping the sexy nature intact and adding dark elements to it, whatever that means. They're only the second game I've seen this broadcast to have a character cap. 80 in the whole game and 10 per canon. I know it's for ballots, so I only wish them good luck. Funny thing is, you can only find the taken stats on the reserve page. As of this recording, they have 19 slots open if all of the reserves submit. You have to check each canon by hand to know if any are approaching the 10 cap limit. I'm not knocking the mods for restricting the size, I get it. It just seems like those stats are so important, I'd think you'd want them easier to find than just one page, and it's not even on the game's profile or navigation. And that about wraps us up. Now, I know that is not every game, but if it was, we'd be here forever, and I wouldn't have anything to chat about later in the month. I am keeping track of when I mention games so that I can try to make sure I cycle through them for fairness. Additionally, might want to give me a month or so to really look through ATP and a couple old comms I found from the DW import in search of straggling games. So once again, if you didn't hear your game mentioned, by all means drop me a line, especially if the game has a mod plurk account that I can follow. The last game I'll mention as we move into weather patterns is Bastion. It's kind of a travel adventure game set on a sci-fi world, so there's a bit of thematic mashup going on, and the RP is loosely based on the construction goal video game of the same name. So why even bother bringing it up considering reserves and apps are constantly open? Well, it has one of the greatest events coming up that I think every mod team should be aware of. More on that after the break.